Good evening. Welcome to the Sometimes Drunk podcast. This is Rebecca, and whoops, sorry, I had to move my mic there. Had to move it some more. Oh shit! I always keep that. Anyway, tonight I will be talking about my experiences as a college student. Okay, sorry, I had to do some stuff with my little chat clients here. Okay, so what we have going on here is a solo cast. That means that I am all by my lonesome. Originally, we were planning to have Miche on. Miche is in the chat right now, saying who they are. Also known as the wonderful Aristotle. I'm Rebecca, also known as the not-so-wonderful Reason Peason. No, that's me being fake modest. I think I'm pretty awesome. And, college troubles leaves, Miche from joining me this evening, a sleeping roommate, and I believe, study room that has people in it, and everyone knows that you don't want to be chatting on the computer with people in it, especially when you're talking about something that all of you are experiencing, and you know that they'll tell you that you're wrong. Art school, am I right? I mean, there's reasons I don't invite, my college friends to watch this. Also because I'm very embarrassed for reasons that I will discuss in this night's episode. I also would like to apologize for how drunk I got last week. I did get my divine punishment by throwing up at my therapist's office the day after. It was a nice, clean vomit. Anyway, I don't have nearly as much vodka this week, so this should be interesting. So, college. Life before, during, and after, as an animation student and an interested artist. I am currently 26 years old, and I started getting serious about art around the time I was 11 years old. That was when I started drawing my own characters, fan characters, that sort of thing. And the structure that I had in my life at that time, of course, was that of middle school and afterwards high school. So I did have something that I needed to do daily. I had my obligations, I had structure in my life, but I also didn't really have the responsibilities that I have right now. And lucky for me, I was able to actually get a copy of Photoshop 7 around when I was 14. And that's when I had my first original characters. So, as a kid, in the early 2000s, we had one computer and we had dial-up for the longest time. And I had to share with two siblings and my parents, so getting banned from the computer was a regular occurrence. Having to be reasonable and share with others was a regular occurrence, so I didn't really get to work on my art as much as I wanted to, but I was a selfish little bitch, so of course I hogged the computer. So I learned to do Photoshop from about that time. I'm on CS6 right now, because if your program crashes, it'll autosave it, so, saving, what's that? Anyway. Oh, I'd also like to apologize if you hear any background noise. All of my aunties are over, and I live with my parents, of course, because after you're done with art school, you end up moving up back in with your parents, but that's a regular occurrence for any college student these days. You know, if you have parents that are understanding enough. Anyway, so that was the thing by ways of structure. Something that I discovered later in life, like in college, was that I actually do very well when I'm among a crowd. Not necessarily interacting with others, but just having the presence of people around me, just calms me. And it makes me feel better. It makes me also not understand why I spend all my time in my room, which probably contributes to some of my problems, of which I will discuss. But, it's effort versus, tools that are available to you versus what you want to accomplish. And if anybody has any questions or comments, you can say so in the chat. I will acknowledge you at some point. I'll be honest, I'm a little insecure right now about doing a solo cast where I'm not reading something. So, when I was in high school, I would draw on paper more than I would online because I didn't get a drawing tablet until 2010, actually. That was 2 years into college, too, for me, so how I managed without a tablet for that long is kind of amazing, but I'm stubborn and didn't want to embrace new technology at the time. In school, though, I did sketches. I did a lot of inking. I colored on the computer, though, and that's what made me so great. I learned how to use the line tool. I learned how to make it work for me. I think I got a pretty solid style for such a young person. And like I said, there was a lot of resources available to me. I'm actually very lucky that I live in a pretty good part of New Jersey, where we have a really good school system with really good electives. So I actually did have a cartooning teacher. And I had a lot of art teachers. There was a wing, like there were some wings in our school that we just referred to as the art wing or the science wing or things like that, you know? Like we had a science wing and an art wing, which was pretty great. So I learned video and film, I learned how to draw, I learned cartooning, a lot of stuff. I really wish that I took like I did take graphic arts. I took graphic arts 1, 2, and I don't remember if I took graphic arts 3, but I had teachers that were very supportive of me and who saw that I was going to do something with this. And that really gave me a lot of motivation, and it made me really believe in what I was doing. I can't say I really had a mentor per se, but I did have a group of teachers that knew of me, knew that I was really into art, have seen what I've drawn. And even the non-art teachers, there was always a project where you had to draw something for some reason, and I always went above and beyond with it if I could. Of course, that's not to talk, like, that I went above and beyond for that, but by the time my brother would go through making his, instead of doing, like, PowerPoint presentations, he would make Flash presentations. The kid's 4 years younger than me. He never went into art. He went into nuclear engineering. I know this is a little bit of a diversion, but I will actually have him on here at some point, talking as somebody who majored and had interest in something non-art related, but did partake in the arts. So the thing is, the school structure was the only thing I really knew. Going into college, that was really interesting. I live in New Jersey now, and I'd lived in New Jersey all my life, but for college, I went to San Francisco when I turned 18. I went to San Francisco, and I lived there for 6 years, actually. And that was actually a really nice period in my life, but at the same time, so much changed, so much went wrong. I did grow a lot as an artist and a lot as a person, but I think the part that makes me look back on it, that it was something that went wrong, is the fact that I came back to New Jersey and that I couldn't stay there. Nostrovia. Anyway, going to college was pretty great. At orientation, I really knew that was where I was meant to be. My buddy Sato, who I met at orientation, she's not here right now, but she has commissioned me for probably the best piece I will ever produce in my entire life. I will be posting it on Christmas. Just a little hint, it's Sonic the Hedgehog related and also Mona Lisa related. So that's something to look forward to. I met Sato. She's still a very good friend at college orientation, but going through the school and looking at everything, it was really nice. There were the drawing tables, and the 2D lab was great. I liked that. There were Macs everywhere, man. Like, there was a proportional amount of Macs to PCs. And it was the first time I really, like, got to know how to use a Mac. Of course, there were the required classes, like there was math, reading, that kind of stuff. I tested pretty well through a lot of them. But again, there was that school structure. And we didn't have dorms. We didn't have dorms, but student housing was apartments that were arranged through the school. So we lived in apartments, and we were put in rooms with another person. And the first place I lived was a 6-person apartment, and that was an interesting setup. There of course was kitchen, a living room, that kind of thing. I usually camped out in the living room till the wee hours of the morning. And we had classes once a week. Like if you had a say a 2D animation class, you would have that class once a week, and each class period was 4 hours long. So the class setup was 8 to 12, 1 to 5, and 6 to 10. There were 3 class periods during the day. So you would have a setup of, say, 6 classes, and you would take each of them once a week for 11 weeks. And that's how our school was arranged. Of course, you could stay at the school in any room you really wanted from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Or 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. Sorry, I'm getting my times mixed up. And I liked that. I really wish that the school was open a lot more. There were independent computer labs, and that was great. But the thing I liked about that was the structure, but not only the structure, but that there was a place to go. And also, what really helped about that was you were in an environment where everybody knew what you were doing, and you could literally ask anybody, hey, how do I get this to work? Hey, do you know where this is? Or something like that. Even if you were a media arts animation student, you could ask, I don't know, I don't even know right now. I can't think of anything. I think the ones that we were distanced from the most were the culinary students, the interior design students, the fashion students, in terms of class structure. But in the beginning, everybody started at the same area. And Mike and I were going to talk about it tonight, whereas the foundational studies. But the nice thing is that there were a lot of resources as an artist. There was the transfer drive that we had in the beginning. It was a drive on the computer that was shared through all of the computers, and if somebody put it on there, anybody could take what was on it. So let me just say that there were several things on there that I actually pulled off before I ended college. There were folders with a bunch of free 3D rigged models so that you could animate. There were pictures of nude models that you could download and all that stuff. And I don't mean like a few, I mean hundreds, maybe even thousands of pictures that I actually have on a drive. I have actually saved everything that I've had since 2008 between my hard drives. So I have all of my work from 2008 onwards. And let me tell you, that's actually helped me out a little bit. I've actually been able to open some of that. But during college, after about a year, when I turned 19, I was having some trouble with midterms. And even though I had that structure, it was hard for me to really pay attention and organize it when I was at home rather than at the school. For me, having like a building that I could go to specifically for the purpose of learning and working really helped me out a lot. And I wish every day that I could have that back, where I could go to a place where everybody was working on something, and it was some sort of work of art, and it was something that they wanted to believe in. And that was, there was something that was comforting about that. If somebody found you crying in the hallway, they knew that it was that it was because of midterms or something, or that your program crashed, or whatever. Everybody just, it's like going to a convention. Everybody just had something in common that was just at its core a shared experience. I would like to say hello to McButts. You just missed me talking about pre-college. Now I'm talking about during college. So I'm a little free with this information, though. That I have some diagnosed mental illnesses, and I am medicated for them. When I was 19, at the end of one of my semesters, I had a pretty major panic attack during one of my classes. I had a class with one of my friends one of my sort of best friends at the time. I'm not sure if I was ever one of her best friends. I don't think I was. But one of my best friends and my roommate, I was in a group project with her, and I started panicking Like, I started having the trouble breathing, I started getting the shakes, I started crying, that kind of thing. And the pressure of finals was getting to me. I ended up leaving that class to go to our disabilities counselor, because I hadn't before that. And I talked to her, and I asked, I really need to go somewhere to talk to somebody. And she referred me to a free clinic, and long story short, I went to the free clinic, I filled out paperwork, I waited for 3 hours, and then I found out they couldn't take me because I had insurance. Of all things, I never thought that I couldn't be taken somewhere because I had insurance. So I walked back in a haze, because after you find out something like that, you're so mentally and emotionally exhausted. Whoops, sorry, bumped my mic. You're so mentally and emotionally exhausted that you just blank out and you just walk like a zombie. I walked back to the school. I went back to the disabilities counselor. I had missed the entire class. Also, a happy note to that class that I stepped out on the finals. I did get a B- in that class, so the final day did not matter so much, did it? I went back to the disabilities counselor, and she actually started calling around to see if anybody would take me with my insurance. And she found that the ER at one hospital would take me. So I went there, and I told them that I was there for anxiety, because I wasn't quite sure what was wrong with me, but I had a panic attack, and I was having trouble, like, just really being. It was pretty terrible, because I was just emotionally empty after I expelled all of my energy, like, being upset and afraid of everything and scared about my future and all that stuff. So they took me, they put the little band on my arm, and they took me in back, and for the first time they gave me some lorazepam, or I think the brand name is Ativan. And it was, quite frankly, it was amazing. Because I never really knew what the depths of the problems I had really was until that moment. The way I used to describe it, or the way I still describe it, is if you go into a Walmart and you go to the TV wall, imagine all those TVs are set to a different channel and you're trying to pay attention to all of them at the same time. But you're also trying to find one in particular. So you're trying to pay attention to what's happening to all of them, but at the same time you can't. There's just too many. Taking that lorazepam for the first time was like all of those TVs were shut off except for one, and I was able to control it. And it was the greatest feeling in the world, and everything was okay. And that was when it really became clear to me that I do have a problem, and I really do need help. So I called my dad, and I told him, hey, when I come back to New Jersey, I need to see a therapist, or I need to see a psychiatrist. Because that was when it also occurred to me that medication would really work for me. So, because of that, around that time, the structure of school, to get back around to the original topic, I swear this all ties in, the structure of school really wasn't helping me very much, because I really didn't want to leave my apartment very much. And that's one of the failings with me, is that I'm a social person, and I do better when I'm surrounded by people, but I don't want to put in the effort to get dressed and go outside, quite frankly. Sometimes it's just too much effort. But what happened was I went back home to New Jersey, I went to see a therapist, I should stop saying therapist because it's really a psychiatrist, he doesn't do talk therapy. I went to see a psychiatrist, and I got diagnosed, at the time, with depression, anxiety, a panic disorder, ADHD, and maybe some mild OCD. I saw several psychiatrists throughout the years after him. One of them thought I had an eating disorder that was in remission. It's probably a binge eating disorder, I'm pretty sure. I gained an embarrassing amount of weight between the end of high school and now, honestly. And it turns out, I found out later that depression that I had was actually bipolar 2. Because what they gave me to get rid of the depression actually made it worse. So I talked to a doctor about it, and the possibility of it being bipolar 2 came up, which has more pronounced depressive episodes and less pronounced manic episodes. I've been medicated for that, and I think it's been helping me since. But here's the thing about medication: it helps, but it doesn't fix the problem. But but it did help me start to concentrate some more. I did really well on my finals for the rest of that semester. And when I came back to school, I felt more motivated. Right now, though, looking back, it's all really a blur. My sense of time is actually pretty messed up these days. All in all, though, even after I graduated, for the year that I was still in college, I was able to come back to the campus and use the computer lab. Being around and having all those teachers, I could ask almost literally any teacher or sit in on any class and just work. And having a place like that was pretty great. All of the computers had the programs I needed. All of the teachers knew the information I needed. I knew where I could find any of these teachers at any given time. I knew that if I wanted to sit in on a 2D animation class, I could. If I could sit in on just whatever class was going on in a computer room, I could do. And I learned a lot in college. I think that it was my greatest period of growth because everybody there also knew me as an adult. One of the things that I really don't like about being back in New Jersey is that everybody here has known me since I was a kid, since I was fumbling through puberty, since I screamed and cried my way through middle school, since I got explosively angry through high school. And I feel like because I was gone for 6 years, that's the only reference point they have to refer back to me as. So that's why college was so good for me. It was somewhere that I was acknowledged and regarded as an adult, where nobody knew who I was in the past, where everybody was able to acknowledge me as a student, an artist, an aspiring animator, and we were able to regard each other the same. There were workshops, there were clubs, there were just groups of friends, there were people that were going to a bar, going to a restaurant, there were breaks between classes, there were collaborative projects. It wasn't a good school, but it was a really good environment. And after that, after graduating, even though I stayed in San Francisco for another year, even though I was able to go back to campus, without the structure of classes, I guess I got lost, man. I got lost long before that, though. There was a point that I lived an hour outside of San Francisco, and I mean an hour by BART and walking. I had to walk a mile to get to BART, and I had to take BART for 40 minutes to get into the city. And that was when my attendance in classes plummeted. That was around the time before I knew that I had bipolar 2 instead of depression, and so I was taking the wrong meds for it. Sorry, I'm pausing to take my drinks. Tonight's drink is the same as it is every episode. Diet Dr. Pepper and peach vodka. Because I drank so much last week, I don't have enough vodka to really get myself sufficiently smashed this week. Oh, and again, if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. I know that I speak pretty fast, and I might speed through this story and be at a loss for what to talk about. So any questions or prompts are appreciated, I assure you. After college, I actually got into an internship for a little while. And it was for mobile phone advertising. For, games and apps and stuff like that. They wanted to get a storyboarder because they wanted somebody to really give them some direction to go with their ads. I haven't really looked into what's become of this company. It was a startup at the time. There were dogs in the office, and I loved those doggies. Those doggies were great. And what happened there is I, unfortunately, hit a period where I was too depressed to move for about 2 weeks. And I didn't go to work. And they said, look, we're just gonna let you go. And I have to say, that is not a way to be. If I could go back, I would tell myself, hey, Look into some good coping techniques, you bitch. Because at the end of the day, you have to learn how to look after yourself, and you have to find out what you can do to make yourself a functioning human in society. After the structure of school, I didn't know what to do with myself. I still don't know what to do with myself. I have a job, but it's a job that I kind of just don't want, except the money is good. I mean, I work for 3 bosses, one of whom I really don't get along well with for reasons. I'm related to her. Anyway, did I put my vodka in here? I did not. There's something fundamentally wrong with me for not doing that. I just like saying Nastrovia, so I'm going to keep saying it whenever I start a new drink. Nastrovia. Oh god, I think it just sits on the top. Ugh. So, what I had to find for myself, I actually realized this today. Today I had an appointment with my therapist. I mentioned that last week I had an appointment too. Last week was my first appointment with this therapist, and I showed up 2 hours early, and because of last week's heavy drinking, last week during the podcast I did some heavy drinking. The next day, I went to my therapist, and while I was waiting, I threw up in her office. But she had a bathroom, so that was good. And it was one of the cleanest vomitings in my life, as in, I had brushed my teeth and they were still minty fresh when I was, when I was done. Nothing got on me, nothing got on the floor. I could have gotten away with it, except I was so proud I bragged that I threw up. Which is really weird, but I'm a weird person like that. I mean, you gotta brag a little about some bodily functions when you have nothing else going on in your life. Don't be like me. And this is what I mean. Sometimes I jokingly tell people, I say those words, I say, don't be like me. People ask me how I do things, and you know what? I actually did, lead a workshop once when I was in college, because one of the nice things was that even in college, even in art school, I was regarded as someone who was really good at what I was doing. Some teachers asked me to show people the right way to do things. Some of my friends asked me how I did some of the things I did, and I tried to help them the best I could. I actually did have 6 separate friends ask me how I do digital painting, and that was why I ran a workshop once. I ran a workshop once to take them through the beginning to the end of digitally coloring something. And it was fun. It was really nice. And I like that. Being in an environment where you can see someone else's work and ask them how they did it, and they have the tools to be able to help you. Hell, I commandeered an overhead projector in one room for that, and it was great. I really miss that. I just felt like I was being taken seriously, and it's somewhere also where everybody regards your decisions and the things you're making as things that adults do, as a legitimate job, as a legitimate career choice. Which is another thing. Being back home, everybody kind of goes oh, she's just playing in her room all day, and it's really hard to just get started. I think this last week is the first time I've had the motivation to actually draw in December, which is really very sad. And I think it's really very sad, honestly. I mean, here's why I shouldn't do solo casts. It's the poor me, I'm so depressed hour. But college was a good time. I really wish I could remember it more clearly, you know? In recent years, I've just gotten in a way where things just blur together, and I can't remember what happened when. I can't remember when I started stuff. It just felt like I had so much going on and such a bright future, and like I could do anything. And before you know it, it's all over, and you're left asking yourself, okay, what now? And I don't know what now. And the reason I talk about my therapist, actually, to bring it back around to that, is that she has given me some structure. It's only been 2 weeks, but she goes like, okay, you need to figure out how to do this, this, and this. And she actually gave me a sheet that was just, a list of stuff to do for self-care. And I'm the kind of person where you put instructions in, you get a result out. I do so much better when I have a list of things to do. But what I do when I'm left independently to give myself a list of things to do is I start doing way too much. One of the things that people don't often say, we talked last week about the artistic ego and how it is very important to know about what you're good at, what you're bad at, and to not be compliment fishy and stuff like that. Part of last week with the artistic ego is if you're just going to say, oh, it sucks, oh, I'm so bad, oh, I really don't like how my art's going, I'm really frustrated with not doing this or that. If you're going to say all that, don't be the kind of person who says all of that but not actually mean it. When a person says that kind of stuff, I am the kind of person who goes like, oh, well, if you're not very happy with this, you could try doing this, this, and this. And I've stopped doing that because on some occasions when I have, artists have reacted quite badly. Saying that, I didn't want criticism, oh, I knew it was shit, and then deleting everything. And no, I wouldn't have bothered if I wasn't trying to help. If you don't criticize or give criticism unless you believe something can be better. At least that's the way I say it. We will have a future episode also about how to give and receive criticism. There's one thing that you learn when you're in art school especially. But, anyway, what I was going to say is, the artistic ego is an important thing, and knowing what your faults and your advantages are is important. And here's the thing. I'll say it. I am a very smart person. I am an intelligent person. And I've known this for a long time. I just have trouble getting motivated and paying attention and keeping focus. I have to tell you, right now, we're half an hour in, and this is the hardest thing in the world for me to do. Alone. And I think that doing solo casts will actually help me try to keep focused. And that's why I've been looking for people to bounce off of all the time. That's why I've asked practically everyone I know, but I really don't know very many people anymore. And that's why I get drunk every week and talk on a stream. It's just another attempt at myself it's just another attempt to give myself some structure, sometimes drunk. And this is why I really appreciate Mihe. This is why I appreciate everybody who watches. This is why I appreciate everybody who has agreed to appear here. Because as a floundering adult who has only just recently began to be able to pay her student loans, who recently got herself some insurance because she's a grown-up, who pays for her own doctor's appointments and everything, having some kind of structure is helping me get back into a flow. In the chat, Miche has made a winky face at me. Thank you. And so I hope that part of my hope for this week is pay attention to yourself and your habits. Try to be able to assess yourself from an objective standpoint. Look at your behaviors and judge them as if they were the behavior of someone else. And you'll see if there's something to be concerned about. That's how I really came to assess my symptoms and the things that were wrong with me. I filled up 3 notebook pages full of deviations of mentally healthy behavior to talk to my therapist about before my first session, my psychiatrist, before my first session, so that they could have an accurate depiction of what was wrong with me. And it's important to judge that, but it has led to some kind of paranoid behavior on my part. I don't know if I can objectively judge myself anymore, or if an objective judging is possible because of the inherent bias that you have when judging yourself, or like conveying anything that's happened to you. So I know that's hard. I know it's really hard to objectively look at your own behavior, but it's very important to growing as a person, to be honest. Just don't go too far with it. That's where the criticism topic for another day will come in, actually. And if anyone has any questions or any way to lead this, that would be very much appreciated. Otherwise, since I ended college, since I stopped, I lived in San Francisco for a year after. And I actually lived in a pretty good area where there was a Muni stop right next to it. There was a period of time where I went to karaoke every Tuesday and got drunk out of my mind and would wander back home at midnight, thereabouts. I once ran into a guy who was trying to help a drunk woman find her way home, but she had a very heavy accent, and she didn't know, we couldn't really understand where she was going. And I had some water. I gave her my bottled water, and I wanted to make sure nothing sketchy was going on, so I helped this guy escort this woman home. And he was actually a pretty cool guy. But San Francisco's a pretty nice place, especially compared to the Northeast. Even in what is the worst part of San Francisco, it was pretty okay. I frequently walked home at 1 a.m., midnight, around those times. It drives my mom crazy to know that that's something I actually did, but I never once got hassled, really. I've had some, cat calling, some whistling, but whatever, man. That would be a pause. So, I'm trying to think where to go with this, man. I feel like I've covered it all. I guess one of the biggest problems that I have right now is, as I mentioned, I'm off the tail end of a depression, actually, where I spent a lot of my time sleeping for most of November and the beginning of December. And all I could do is really get intoxicated and play Overwatch, maybe play Stardew Valley. I've only recently been able to get into Photoshop again and start drawing, so one of the important things that I can actually convey to people that I've seen some of my friends do is don't use your mental illnesses as an excuse. I kind of do. But there are other times where I don't live somewhere where people where people seem to really understand. I was recently accused of trying to be special and different because having to convince yourself every morning that life is worth living is tiring. And I conveyed that to somebody, and they told me that not everybody wakes up in the day ready to go to work and enjoying everything, and apparently that's the same as wanting to die every morning. Apparently. The thing I need to tell certain people that I know, that I shall not name because I have made it a rule not to name any names. That's an important rule, by the way. If you're doing some kind of podcast or public stream or something, don't name names, man. You're gonna get so much trouble that way. But I was accused of trying to be special and different. And I kind of had a bit of a crisis for the last week about, am I trying to hide behind my mental illnesses not to do anything? Have I become the kind of person that I hate, But if I am at a job or if I'm doing something, I won't mention it. I'll say, I'm sorry, I didn't do well, I had some personal issues come up. I'd like to prove that I'm capable. And I think my advice to anybody who has that is just force yourself. No matter how much it hurts, no matter how much you are convincing yourself otherwise, just fucking force yourself. Because the thing is, when I get really angry sometimes, when I was a young kid and I got angry, I got physically violent. And I mean young kid, like 12 and under. I got physically violent when I was young, and even though I learned to control the anger, it doesn't mean that the urge to break shit goes away. But the thing is, I even know when I'm angry that if I were to break anything, that after the anger has passed, I would regret it. So the thing that you need to tell yourself while you're too depressed is that even though you don't give any shits right now, and even though you can't care, you know that at some point you're going to come out of it, and at that point you will care. So even if you don't care about your future self, just try to put yourself in your future self's shoes where you do care and it did cause problems. It sounds weird, and I don't know how to quantify it, but I think I'm just working on a different level, as pretentious as that sounds. But it's a level of thinking that you need to get yourself in the habit of. There are quite a few artists that I very much admire, that it feels like no matter how they're feeling, they persist, and they practice, and they work, because they know that they have to. And I have it as a luxury where I don't need to, where I could just float through life, and I can just go to work, and I can just busy myself with putting parentheses around phone number area codes for literally hours, and get paid for it. But the thing is, that's not fulfilling. What you have to do is you have to build a structure for yourself. You have to figure out what it is you need. I crave social interaction, so it's probably in my best interest to maybe go to the library to work a little, or go to a Starbucks to draw a little. Just something to clear your head. Because holing up in my room has not been helping. It's been 3 years since I graduated college, 2 years since I came back to New Jersey. And it'll take you a while to figure things out. And no matter how old you get, you're still going to be figuring things out. College isn't really a magic ticket. You really have to still work for it. You get as much out of college as you put in. And even if you graduate, even if your college's employment rate right out is 90%, you could still be part of the 10% that doesn't get employed. You can still fuck up if you do get employed. So the important thing is to just keep a structure that works, find ways to cope that work. Always keep trying to get better. Because if you hide behind your problems as an excuse not to do things, you're just making them worse. I still have 15 minutes. I'm not drunk enough for this, man. I'm not drunk enough for it. Which I guess is a good thing. I mean, we gotta be I'm not drunk enough for this, and I still typoed. I'm just realizing that I typoed. And actually, I have to say that if there's one thing I'm proud of right now, it's my persistence in doing Sometimes Drunk every week. We're 5 weeks in, and that's more than a month right now. Next week is Christmas Eve, and I have a very particular topic in mind for that one. Because, as I mentioned in past podcasts, I am of Polish heritage. I don't know if I mentioned that. I'm of Polish heritage. Me and Miche are Slavic buddies, except in Croatia, it doesn't mean a damn thing. I'm American, and that's it. In Europe, I'm American, and that's it. Don't matter that I have Polish heritage. And that's what I appreciate about Miche, which is what I've said, that she's my non-American friend, who has given me these perspectives. But next week is Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve is very important to us. We have some, loose practices as Polish Catholics, where we don't eat meat, we eat mushroom soup, and we have the płatek, which is a wafer that you break before your meal, and with everybody at the table. and you kiss each other and say Merry Christmas. We once had, like, this one kid from up the street get caught up right in the middle of the potluck, and we're like, hey, come over here. And he had no idea what was going on. He just knew that all of us were just breaking these wafers, kissing each other, feeding them, and then just saying Merry Christmas. And so we just did it with him, and he's like, Happy Płatek every time. So that was cute. Polish Catholics, am I right? So, but yeah, at that, next week we'll be talking about, or I'll be talking about, it's probably just going to be me. I'm going to see if I could sneak one actually during the day, not at the 8 to 9. At 8 to 9 we'll probably be eating dinner. But, I'll be talking about actually writing next week, and the difficulties of writing characters where you want to have, like, some subtle, like, cultural features to them. And as somebody who is, let's see, Jaji, Grammy, Mommy. Yeah, I'm 4th gen Polish. And we still maintain some stuff like holdover traditions and phrasing and shit like that just because of that. We don't hold anything over from my dad's side because I guess my mom's side is overwhelming to my dad. But, you know, things that are sort of subtle features, like I said, there's just the Christmas Eve thing, there's... Oh, my great-grandparents, I called them Bopshi and Jaji, and for the longest time, like, I didn't even realize that was, like, it's like when you're a kid, you're like, oh, everyone has a Bopshi and Jaji, right? Jaji being grandfather and Bopshi being grandmother, even though they were my great-grandparents at that point, it's like, who gives a shit? My Grammy didn't want to go by Bopshi. But that'll be next week. That'll be next week. Does anybody have questions? Comments? Before I go into anything else? And I know there's like a 20-second lag, but I don't like silence. Dead air is not a good thing. It's not your friend. I have the sniffles. I'm terribly professional, of course. So, I think the biggest problem that I have these days, I was talking to my therapist about that, is the ADHD. And I have trouble focusing on things. I actually go between hyper-focusing on stuff and not focusing on stuff. And one of my biggest problems is I have such a short attention span. And because of that, I have a million stories and projects. I'm a very impatient person. And I want to get everything done at the same time, but slowly I am trying to train myself to work on one thing at a time. And I think it's really important to instill some good habits in yourself, no matter how hard it is, no matter how much you resist, no matter how much you don't want to, and no matter how much you have the freedom to not do it. It's important to instill some good habits in yourself. So my advice is, at the end of the day, wait, I can't spread out my final thoughts in 12 minutes. Unless I drink more, damn it, I'm finishing off this bottle. Chug, man, chug. I'm very sure that you appreciate the gross drinking noises. I'm very sure. Again, it is New Amsterdam brand vodka. Favorite classes from college, though. 2D animation, storyboarding, character design, background design, 3D visual effects, rigging, character modeling. I think those were some of my favorite classes. Oh, production. Production took place over 3 semesters and was making our final film. I also liked portfolio classes, too. That was where I built my website for the first time. And I really need to update my website and then link it everywhere that I can, honestly. reasonpeason.com. Oh, and one more thing, part of personal branding. That's why I go by Reason Peason. I have a father who shares the same initials as me, and therefore has taken over R. Peason, so I can't go by R. Peason. And the other thing about my last name, the thing that I am very aware of with my last name is that it is very uncommon. Extremely uncommon. It tries to autocorrect to Pearson all the time. There is no R, and that is kind of why I go with Reason Peason. Actually, that's entirely why I go with Reason Peason. My sister and I had a teacher in the 8th grade who would greet everybody with alliteration or rhymes, and she would greet me and my sister. Like, I was in her class one year, and the next year my sister was in her class. She would greet both of us with, "What's the reason, Peason?" And I'm the Reason Peason for the season. Thank you, Twitter. And that's the last of my vodka going in there. I'm not even buzzed, man. I had like a 5th bottle left. But that's why I go with Reason Peason. It's part of my personal branding, so heaven forbid anything ever happen to me or destroy my reputation. I'd never, ever escape it. I would never, ever escape it if anything were to happen to my reputation, and that's why I try to be careful, but being as painfully intelligent as I am, and as fucking stuck up that sounds, if you're intelligent, acknowledge it. If you're good at art, acknowledge it. If there's things that you're good at, acknowledge it. Your fake modesty is not getting you anywhere. Knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses are important, and people will respect you for knowing those things. Don't be an arrogant jerk about them. And now that I've dawdled a bit and lost a viewer, thank you. Now that I've dawdled a bit, I think I can get to my final thoughts here. In the end, what you need to do is identify what sort of structures worked for you. You need to find what made you most efficient. And you need to replicate that, or at least find ways to replicate it on your own time. Because those structures will change. But if you can find a consistent way to keep yourself involved, that is the best thing you can do for yourself. Identify problematic behaviors that you have, things that hinder you, and try to find coping methods. Try to find answers for what that is and how you can live with it, or how to maximize it. Find the things that do work for you. Find what gets you hyper-focused. Find out if there's ways to tap into that, because that will be very important to you. Find if you are a social person or a less social person. I won't say antisocial. I don't know. Find out if you're better when you're surrounded by people or when you're alone. If you work better listening to videos or listening to music or nothing at all. Find out if you're better while eating or drinking or anything like that. If performing a certain ritual every day helps you focus or helps you feel good about things, as long as it gets you to work efficiently as a person and improves your quality of life, it is worth doing. It helps you. And in the end, what you need to do is become a functioning person, whatever that means. Not everyone functions the same way. If you need therapy, you need therapy. If you need medication, you need medication. If you have problems that you don't want medication or therapy for, find something that works for it. And I can say also, as somebody who is in therapy and has medication, that it does not have an effect on your creative mind. It actually helps you utilize your creative mind. I've actually had periods where I've gone without the medication for a little bit, and it was terrible. I am a much worse person without my medication. I have trouble sleeping. I can't get my mind to shut up. One of the most reassuring things to me when I got medicated was I was actually literally able to think about nothing. I was able to turn off my brain and not register anything. And that was one of the most beautiful moments, was knowing that while my mind was capable of doing so much, I could make it do nothing. And getting it to shut up on the inside was such a relief, to be quite honest. So, like I said, in the end, just find what makes you function. As long as you're not hurting yourself or anyone else, and it improves your quality of life, it's worth doing. And the other thing is, do everything you can. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. No matter how old you get, you're still young enough to keep learning. I'm 26, and sometimes I have crises about being old. I'm not old. I'm young. I've got a full life ahead of me. I have all this quote unquote wisdom. I air quote when I say that, but I really wish that I could convey that. I have all this stuff that I like to convey to other people. I have opinions that I want to share. I'm a fucking adult, man. And I feel like I have stuff that's worth saying. I feel like there's stuff that people would like to hear about. But in the end, as long as you're just trying to be a better person, as long as you are trying, period, you're doing well. But just be open to the possibilities. Try to be the best person you can be. Try to find ways to make yourself work better. Try to find ways to make your work better. And you're doing well. Just don't let yourself stagnate. Don't let yourself just rot away all alone. Get out there. I mean, my dad likes saying this. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So take all the shots you can. You might miss 1,000,000 of them, but the ones that you make are worth it. And so that's pretty much what I have to leave you with, guys. So, if there's again, at the end, we have 3 minutes left. If there are any questions or comments, please put them in the chat right now. I'm going to have a drink of my last drink of the cast. I am out of vodka, so all I have left is a small bit of Dr. Pepper. I'll say this right now if I never said it. Dr. Pepper is one of the greatest mixers that I've found for vodka. It has the same bitter aftertaste that alcohol does in general. So it masks it quite well. You can put much more alcohol in Dr. Pepper than you can any other mixer I've encountered. In the end, shout out to all 4 of my viewers this evening. You all are great. You stayed with me for the entire hour. So, like I always say, our audience may be small, but you guys do make it worth it. And if I give you any kind of inspiration or help, or if you just like listening to me, if you just like my voice, I really appreciate it. And even if you never respond, or even if you don't say anything, if I just if I just bring you something good in your life, that makes it all worth it. So, I don't know, you just start these things thinking you have something worth saying, or you have things that you want to say. And Miche and I wanted to do a podcast for a long time, and we finally set a date for it. That's one thing that helps, by the way, give structure. Set dates, set deadlines. So, in the end, just give yourself some structure. Find what works for you. Give yourself tasks. Give dates to these tasks. Break down your times. It all comes down to time management. It all comes down to coping methods. And it all comes down to trying to make yourself a better person than you were yesterday. So, keep on going. Keep being awesome. And keep being a better person. Thank you for joining me tonight. This is the Sometimes Drunk podcast. This was Rebecca and her meandering thoughts on before, during, and after college and giving yourself structure to help be a better person. Good night, and thank you for joining me.